Okay, so good to see you. Thank you for straightening my tie, and I'm telling you, you're looking really good. And welcome to you in the audience. A pleasure to welcome to the program Edmund Voyer, and he's billed as a senior sales executive for major financial institutions. He's got an understanding of economics in a way. We're going to talk about Social Security and other interesting matters that are of great import to the American society. And we had done a program previously with him some months ago, and this is going to be following upon that.
Excellent.
And Edmund, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you for having me, Harold. It's a delight to be here.
It's so good to see you. We shared a party the other night that was
Yes.
very good and so forth. And we did do a program, an hour program a few months back and so forth. But I wonder if maybe you could, Edmund, if you would, share, and we wanted to talk about Social Security, a major issue that there doesn't seem to be enough talk even in this political season about, it seems to me. But I wonder if you could share your own background, born and raised, that sort of thing.
Good. My background is pretty simple. I was born in New York, raised in New Jersey. Went to Drew University for my undergraduate in economics and political science, and my graduate work at Fordham in finance and marketing.
Okay.
I worked for a time in the auto industry as an economist, and later I ran a small division of an automotive company. Greed got the better of me, and I became a stockbroker, and I worked in that field for 18 years.
18 is a long time.
It is a long time.
Did you work with one of the big firms?
I worked with Merrill Lynch and Gruntle, and had a good time at it, but felt it was time to leave, and I'm now doing some consulting and looking in other fields.
Oh, very good. You say greed got the better of you.
Yes.
People going into that field, are they induced by greed, do you think, or what?
Yes, they're certainly not induced by the ease of the process. It's a lot of hard work to become a broker.
Okay, it is.
Long hours and a lot of discipline. Meetings, greeting, and working with strangers until they become friends. So I'd say it's a tough one, and you go into it with the opportunity to make a fairly decent living.
Okay, and then is it tied into investment banking, or people that are investment banking?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It depends on as I was a retail broker, so I did a minimal amount of investment banking work. I did some work with startup high technology and telecommunications companies and help bring them public. But by and large, I was dealing with high net worth individuals who ran or owned the companies.
Okay. Well, that I can see where that kind of work could be very, apart from the greed, as you say. I mean, there's, it could be very interesting and challenging work and very fulfilling in a way that a teacher might do, or somebody else in one of the other professions.
Absolutely. You're imparting knowledge, and at the same time you have an urgency to learn as much as possible, at least the good brokers do. Hopefully that stays with me forever, but you have to keep abreast with the economy, the economic policies, where the world is going, where the technology is going, and of course that gives you the opportunity to form opinions, which is why I'm here.
Very, very good. And then it's important for you to have those knowledge, that kind of knowledge, in order to give advice to people as far as how investments are going to be made and the large movements within the economy. You want to be able to understand, is it like reading the racing form at the track, or what is an analogy?
It almost feels like reading the racing form on a close-up level, but certainly in a macroeconomic level, it's predictable to a degree. We do know that the economy moves in cycles, and because it moves in cycles, and choosing when the turning points are is a hard part, but because it moves in cycles, we know that if things go up, they're going to go down, and we know if they go down, they'll go back up.
Do we pay attention to those cycles adequately?
No, we politicize them.
Yeah, we do. Okay.
For example, this has been a big bugaboo to me. My belief is that a lot of the mainstream media tends to be left-wing, and ergo also anti-Republican, anti-Bush.
Right.
And as an example, they blame the last recession of 1991 on President Bush. The one problem is That recession started in October of 2000 when Bush was not even elected president. So it's really a Clinton recession because of 8 years of growth that had taken place during the Clinton years.
Okay.
Just as the brief recession that occurred under Bush the first followed 8 years of growth that occurred during the Reagan years.
Yeah.
In fact, those 8 years were rather long periods of time. Normally, historically, it would be a 5 or 6 year cycle. So we've been stretching that cycle. Today, they're talking about the Great Depression that we're in. We're not.
We're not in the Depression now.
Well, we're not in a recession. We haven't had 2 quarters back to back of a downward economy.
Yeah.
Not just no growth.
No.
We've had a slowing of the growth, and we've had a segmented decline in certain industries where vast excesses took place. And the whole reason we have recessions is to cure excesses that take place in an economy. It's like any organism that if it's fed too much, it gets fat and it has to go on a diet. A recession is the economy's way of going on a diet. And, it's painful if you're part of the excess fat, but it's necessary for a healthy organism.
And they've come with regularity through the economic course of our nation or the world, I guess.
Not only, we've read about the tulip bubble crisis. The canals had a bubble burst in the 1820s. The railroads had a bubble burst. The cars had a bubble burst. The airlines had a bubble burst. In fact, it's almost all communication, the big ones. The telecommunication bubble that burst in 01. The dot-coms was, as we recall, a dramatic overexpansion, and you could not get anyone to believe that there would be a turnaround. That a company like Cisco, which is a good growth company in the computer and .com industry. Backtrack a second.
Sure.
Cisco was valued at 2 or 3 times the value of General Electric.
Really?
Yes.
Good grief.
Even though General Electric probably does 10 times the business of Cisco or more. Now, of course, Cisco's fallen sufficiently in value and GE has gone up enough that they're back into a proportionate ratio of worth. But that's what the bubble was like. Small companies being touted as being worth more than superb, huge companies like General Electric, and we would believe them. There was a time
they would be citing the potential earnings of that new guy in the block.
Yeah, and I used to joke that they're selling a forward earnings of the year 3000. So my one drawback is what was painful to me is most of my clients were in that industry and they believed their own hype. So only a few of them were put into balanced portfolios. The bulk of them got slaughtered when their own companies went down in value. Like a Cisco, which went from $88 a share to $8 a share in 01.
Okay. What happens when we're talking about cycles and so forth? I knew, I don't know if you remember a fellow, Ravi Batra. He was talking about the Great Depression of 1990. And then we did have a great big worldwide bust around about 1929 and 30.
Right.
It was like some sort of a 30-year cycle or...
Those are Kondratiev curves.
Kondratiev, that's it. I remember that term now, yeah. And do you put stock in that? Do we put stock in that? And,
well, I had a
those
cousin who was a stockbroker, and he
there's a
believed
recession.
in it.
There's a recession, and then there's a depression, and then there's a Great Depression.
What the Kondratiev curves talk about are mini cycles, the 5-year, 6-year cycles I just mentioned earlier, followed by larger, 30, 40-year cycles or waves, followed by, dramatic, century-long waves. Nice theory. It's garbage.
It is. You think? Oh, that thing.
It's. Will we have a big recession in the future? Absolutely. Will it be? Can you tell me when? No. Can I tell you when? No.
And people who try to track that haven't been very successfully able to do that.
They haven't. When I was an economist in the auto industry back in the Stone Ages of the 1980s, I used to just throw a recession every 6 years into my forecast.
Just do it.
I just threw it in. I didn't know when it would come, but I knew it would come. And I wanted to let my company know that it was going to come, that things don't go straight up and they don't go straight down forever.
Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I like to think of it as just cycles.
Okay.
And Plato wrote about cycles. The Greeks were aware of it. They called it hubris. You could say when an economy reaches a hubristic state, it has its fall.
Well, hubris is overweening pride. Or something. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, the dot-commers certainly had overweening pride, didn't they? When they thought their company without a profit was worth as much as a GE. Or when a dot-com, without bricks and mortar store, like an Amazon, was valued close to Walmart.
Amazon's doing very well now.
It's doing great. It'll
eBay's doing well. There's some
absolutely,
things
and they're
Google's pretty good. Yeah.
And they're like a mote in God's eye. Walmart, we forget how huge Walmart is.
Oh, Walmart is gigantic.
Exactly. Walmart is gigantic, and it would take 100 Amazons and Googles and eBays to equal a Walmart. So they've done well, but there was no reason back in 2001 to think these companies were going to be valued as much as a Walmart.
A Walmart, something as big as that, I mean, they got such economies of scale. Is there why don't we just have, instead, we used to have Ford, Chrysler, General Motors, why don't we just have one industry leader like Walmart do all the distribution of goods with all those supply chain linkings and everything like that, and get greater efficiencies than bothering with other companies trying to compete with them?
It's funny that you would say that. It's quasi-socialistic too, but it's interesting. As it turns out, my brother-in-law runs a company that does logistics, and out in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And they do close to $1 billion in business a year, and their whole job.
Billion with a B.
With a B.
Oh, it's
it's a large company.
Yes.
And he used to be with USCO, which was even larger, and he was chairman of the Warehouse and Logistics Association for the United States.
Warehouses, they make timber also?
Warehousing and logistics.
Oh, warehousing. Sorry,
not wirehouse. Warehousing.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, all of those things are logistics firms.
Yeah.
They figured out how to get goods delivered to some place.
Well, that's what Walmart is very
Walmart,
good in the retail business.
Well, now and yes.
Yeah, okay.
Walmart's real business is retail. A logistics firm's real business is logistics. Now, when the
material handling,
when the bubble burst in 2001, my brother-in-law mentioned that he was buying on 10 cents on the dollar .com stores, logistics centers.
Logistics centers.
Because
he could integrate that. Yeah.
Well, he could integrate it because he ran a logistics firm.
Right.
These retail outlets were trying to set up from scratch logistics companies to distribute the goods they were selling.
Right.
Well, that's not their business, so they failed at it. Walmart does logistics, and Walmart, I would lay odds, also jobs out a lot of its logistics. The mid-sized and smaller chains of stores move their logistics out. So there's a very vibrant competition in worldwide logistics on how to get goods from one place to the other. As an example, UPS, FedEx, DHL.
U.S. Mail?
Even U.S. Mail is the largest logistics server in the world.
Logistics is
moving goods.
Moving goods, not information necessarily. Information.
No, it's nothing to do with information.
Yeah.
Information simply used to plan where those goods are going and how.
Right. And they integrated those kind of things like that.
But the information part of it is what's called operations research,
okay,
which is the least expensive method of moving from point A to B to C to D.
Yeah. Now, tracking these kind of developments, something you would have been doing when you were a stockbroker.
Absolutely.
Because you had to know this is a better bet than that one, and who's doing the right thing.
Where I would want to put more resources of a client's money, or where I'd like to investigate it. But at the same time,
where they think if you put more money there, they're going to realize a better return.
Yes.
It's like betting on a horse?
No.
No, okay.
No. In fact, I have several types of things. Because of trends and cycles, at one point when I was at Merrill Lynch, I was 19th worldwide trading options. And to an outsider, options is absolutely horse racing. It's gambling. I used to joke when a client would come to me, I'd say, why don't you give me half the money and let me keep it personally. You take the other half and go to Atlantic City, have a great dinner and gamble the rest away, and in a year's time we'll be in the same position you would be had you traded options, except this way we'll both be happy.
Spell out options for us.
Okay, options are essentially future values of a stock, like a commodity, but in a limited value. It's for example, if a stock is $50, you might buy an option that begins to have worth when the stock hits $55 or $60, or that's called a call. A put is the opposite end of that, where it might have value when the stock falls.
That's in stock trading, but they also have options in to the management, leading management of companies will get stock options.
Those are different options
entirely. And that's a different way of compensation
that's
because
correct.
It ties into the future earnings of the company. They put them in that.
No.
No. Okay.
It ties into the future value of the stock.
Okay. Right.
So you're given. Let's say company Y's stock is at $60 a share. You're given options with a buy-in value of $1 when the stock hits 70 or any price above. So at 60 it has no value. At 70 it's worthless. At 72 it's worth more.
I once saw Mitch McConnell say we ought to give stock options to everybody instead of it being only to management. But the management, a good deal of it to people who acquired, let's say in a company that's growing very quickly, acquired a fast net worth is to have had stock options, and the stock went up greatly, and so they got in on that growth and value.
Bill Gates created more millionaires than any man in history.
Okay.
Early people who did get stock options, secretaries, or people who were paid stock in their pension plan, which is another way of remunerating. ESOPs, employee stock option plans, let employees put in some money and it's matched dollar for dollar by the employer.
Well, ESOPs are also, I don't know if it's the same ESOP you're talking about that I'm, ESOP's Fables.
No, that's AES.
Yeah, I know, I'm making a joke at that
and
level.
I laughed. I had to.
Thank you, you got a little chuckle, that's good.
I was preparing for it.
But an ESOP was employee stock ownership plan.
Right.
No, not an option, it was an ownership plan. And that was the thing where you begin to build ownership into the employees rather than into the traditional ownership class. And that was something he tried to exert.
It depends on the level. Quite frankly, the employee might be putting 3 or 4% of their salary into this ownership plan. It's going to take all the employees a long time to build up significant worth unless the company dramatically goes up in value.
Okay,
so
I'm wondering if it's possible for us to think about increasing the percentage of the population of the country that is going to realize income for life's purposes, rent, buy food, and so forth, from something other than their labor participation in production.
Absolutely.
You think that it is possible?
It's possible, and it's occurring now.
Okay, that I'd like to talk about, because if we could. But go ahead. You're really laying it out.
Let's draw it out.
Yeah, it's very educational.
Because we started with the employee stock ownership plan, stock option plan. It doesn't matter. It's a way for employees to get stock at a cheap price from the company and hope that the value of the company goes up as the employee works, and it gives incentives to the employee to work hard and make the company thrive.
That's true, and it's also true, isn't it, Edmund, in terms of business? One thing is that the logic of business finance, you're going to make an investment, whoever's the management or whatever, you're going to make an investment in something that is going to pay for itself out of its future earnings.
Sure.
And if it doesn't, it's a bad business investment.
Correct.
So that idea, rather than just savings, Mr. Fisher talked about savings, or Harold Moulton, saving, we have to get past just the savings, that you're able to tap into the future earnings of the investment, and that's pretty much limited to a relatively small percentage of the American population.
It doesn't have to be.
No, but it has been traditionally, or not?
It has been traditionally, and I always like to think it's the rich and the poor fighting at the expense of the middle class. But taking a step further, the Democrats, for example, poo-pooed and belittled George Bush's Social Security proposal.
Well, I don't think it's been given the kind of attention as sort of dead on arrival.
It was dead on arrival.
And I'm not sure it's right that it should be dead on arrival, and I don't think it should. I think it's something that should be discussed in the current political campaign, don't
Absolutely,
you?
and it's not.
Yeah, I know.
Because it is dead on arrival
Yeah.
already. They killed it with Bush. Bush doesn't have the cojones to raise it again, and he doesn't have the political...
Well,
he's powerless at
For
this
one
point.
thing, they address Social Security, and Social Security is a third rail that you get electrocuted if you go near it because it's so politically popular.
It's popular, especially with people older than me. And
that's me.
Like you. Well, you have no choice. You will never benefit from whatever future program Social Security evolves into.
Oh, okay.
I am now, in another year, I'll be too old to be allowed to participate myself. So this is going to be for my children, who are 10 and 14. What Bush proposed, and many libertarians and conservatives proposed, was allowing a portion of the contributions to go into some sort of fund similar to that of a 401k or the retirement fund that Congress uses itself. This is also similar to what the teacher's pension plan is.
Isn't it CREF or something?
CREF is the company. It's a company that
does
manages
a lot of
it, but
education,
it's just one of many.
Yeah.
I ran one when I was in the brokerage firm too. I ran a school systems pension.
Okay.
However, not in options.
Yeah, right. No, I understand. Yeah.
But the idea is that over the long term, even though John Maynard Keynes who said in the long run we're all dead?
Yes.
But in the long run, equity outperforms everything else.
That's true. You got charts that could show that easy.
Yeah, and over any 10-year period, including the Great Depression, any 10-year period, the economy has risen above the 10 years prior. Every 10-year period. So from 1927 to 37, 28 to 38, and onward. Every 10-year period, it's improved. Historically, it's grown between 9 and 11%, and that's
annually.
Annually, and that's a long term on a blue chip portfolio. Bonds historically have done 5 or 6%. I suggest they'll do less because we're in a lower inflation period now. But fixed income and stock together should do 7, 8, or 9% in a blended portfolio.
That would be a blended portfolio of the overall economy.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Bush had proposed allowing half of the money from young participants to go into some sort of blended, heavily regulated portfolio akin to that used by teachers, by railroad workers, by the Congress, and by the way, pension unions, which are terribly run and filled with corruption, invest in stocks and bonds too. So don't say it isn't done for the people, it's disguised.
Yeah.
So this lets the people have a little better handle on how they want to put their portfolio. The fact is that historically, Social Security has grown at less than a 1% rate per year.
Why so low?
Because it's put into non-paying corporate government bonds, and they don't pay anything.
Well, the corporate bonds are very, very secure.
Well, they don't put it in corporates; they put it in treasuries.
Treasury bills or treasuries.
Yep,
yeah.
they're.
And but it's all part of an economy.
It's all part of the federal government. It has very little to do with the economic growth of the nation, and and it's certainly not paying anything. Otherwise, it would earn more than the historic, less than 1%.
Well, is it one of the things you have when you're dealing, if I may, and I'm not familiar, but one of the things that you're dealing with when any kind of a business decision, or let's say an investment decision, or economic policy, macroeconomic understanding, one of the factors is risk. And there are some things that are riskier than others.
Two types of risks, Harold.
Okay.
The one you're talking about, of course, is that stocks can go down in value and bonds can go down in value. Companies can go bankrupt. But as I pointed out, in every 10-year period, the economy has never gone negative.
Not even in 29,
including please. If you look at an S&P 1000 or a Dow chart from 1900 to today, or from 1860 to today, the chart starts down here, goes way up here, and the Great Depression is something like this.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's a nothing in the long run.
In the long run. Is that applicable to the world economy?
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's progress.
There has been. I mean, quite frankly, Poor people in this country drive cars and have air conditioners. I mean, obviously there's progress.
Right.
You know, a middle-class person, if you don't count servants and sheer space of homes, lives better than any millionaire in the 1800s and lives longer.
Oh, yeah.
And healthier.
My daddy was born in 1899, and he was buried on his 48th birthday. And that was the average age of a person born in 1899, male.
Yep.
Was 48. It's now, what, 78, 80. That's one measure of growth,
That's
isn't
a
it, in
great
terms
measure
of
of
overall
growth.
civilization?
And in fact, ours is even higher. It's disguised by the large number of immigrants we have in this country.
We do have a large number.
And
12 million, I think.
Well, even higher. No, that's 12 million illegal.
Illegals.
Probably 30 or 40 million.
Well, I did a program that aired last week from when it actually aired today, the 21st. It was with Guillermo Linares. He's our commissioner in the mayor's office for immigrants' rights.
I read that.
And, you know, he said that 30% of the inhabitants of New York City are immigrants, and if you count the children of the immigrants, 60-odd% of the people in New York City are either immigrants or the children of
absolutely.
immigrants. And I think it's great.
It's
because
at least
you've got such a mixing pot. You've got everybody here, and I think New York is just wonderfully blessed for having all of that diversity.
If we can remember to jump back to Social Security, I'd like to segue off for a moment.
All right.
And say, isn't it time then that we did away with affirmative action? Because we're not a majority anymore. We're not the majority. We're a minority.
By we, you mean white
Anglo-Saxon males, or at least the ones
of royal descent?
Absolutely. I'm only noble, but you know.
You're only noble?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You're not in Burke's peerage?
We'll discuss that later.
All right, yeah. But you are Scot.
Scotch, French, and German. Scottish,
Scot,
French, and German.
you know, and the Scots invented the modern world, so said Mr. Herman, as we said
true.
in the last program, and there's truth to that. But there's been a steady increase, and I suppose that's true, and the ability to do, you know,
I would say
you believe in progress, August Comte, or something like that, yeah.
My view is that at this point in our society, we should treat every individual like an individual and let everyone strive and benefit on their own, and you know, not let, you know, why should a middle-class black child have more benefits and more grants and aid than an Appalachian white child? And they do. Because it's based on race, not on economic needs, and it's also not based on performance. I mean, so we've removed needs and performance, and we're just judging on someone's race or ethnicity.
You quoted Mr. Keynes. He was something else, man. John Maynard Keynes was set, you know, the whole thing after, say, Bretton Woods and all that.
Sure, I thought it was a disaster, but
well, okay, he demand side kind of thing and everything. But he wrote the general theory, and then all of the post-World War II institutions.
Every bit of garbage we were forced to read when we were young economic students.
And do you remember Mr. Nixon in 1972 saying, "We're all Keynesians now"? I remember him saying that and everything.
Yeah, which is why I didn't like Nixon.
Well, okay. One of the things that Mr. Keynes said, among others, I thought he was very erudite and everything. But anyway, one of the things he said was that he wrote a letter to our grandchildren, 1930, and he said, among other things in there, that he's writing it to the grandchild.
Yeah, that would be me.
And he said, perhaps, or well, actually, it'd be people, about now, anyway. But he said that we're going to be afflicted by something that's very hard to see now, but is going to become, and it's going to be technologically induced unemployment. And his claim was that the increase of the capability to produce goods and services and so forth was going to become so capital intensive and so capable of producing great amounts of wealth, and the input of labor in a ratio with capital instruments is going to be so high that they're going to displace the input of labor, human labor, into the productive process, and that we're going to have technologically induced unemployment.
The lumpen proletariat.
All of our economic models that we have, the basic policy grounding statement in the United States, the Employment Act, of 1946.
Right, but Milton
and
Friedman luckily proved him
wrong.
wrong.
Let me just finish the point. And then there's going to be that you're going to distribute income to the masses of the people through their labor participation, intellectual and physical labor participation in production, and that value, the labor theory of value, that some could argue informs all economic theory, and is the source of value as the human input, is going to be offset or is going to be challenged by the realities that are going to emerge as technology and the extensions of consciousness that the technology represents is going to be in machinery and in equipment is going to become productive, and the human input to the productive process is going to be, you're no longer going to be able to distribute income according to labor criteria or people having a job, or even you could extend it philosophically, or a means of activity in the world by which you're going to realize
Let me jump
income.
in now.
Now, you think he was off on that?
Well, not only was he off, there was another economist before him who said the same thing, who also said that we would starve to death by the 1840s. Malthus.
Well, yeah.
He was wrong.
Yes, he was.
We keep making pie.
Yeah.
We keep making the pie bigger.
Okay.
We keep baking more pies. We find uses for the underemployed. In point of fact, our economy right now, bad economy and all, 5.4% unemployment rate.
Yeah, it used to be thought as full employment.
It was full. Under Nixon, under Johnson, that was full employment.
Not to mention Mr. Johnson.
Absolutely.
Carter.
Carter, when we had
19% inflation or something,
and
like
10% unemployment.
Yeah, right.
We have a 5 and a 5.4, 5.5. It fluxes a little bit, but in fact, they have found jobs for these people, and they did. The government didn't do it. Industry did it. Somehow, they're working, they're buying, they're thriving. The paradigm has changed.
Okay.
And you and I are not bright enough to tell us what the paradigm will be in the year 2050. It's fun to fantasize. Yeah, it's 40 years.
Yeah.
My child
That's
will
right. It's 42.
My son will be 2 years younger than I am now. And
and you notice the time goes faster the older you get? You haven't gotten to that age yet where you...
I'm going to do an aside. My mom turned 90 last year.
God bless her.
She's older than my dad.
Yeah.
My dad turned 84 last month. But my mom was born in 1917, so she was in Germany for World War I and managed to be through a very tumultuous period.
And she was here for the flu
but
the first year on her
1919.
Birth. Yeah, that was terrible.
But the age period between my mother's date of birth and the end of the American Civil War is the same as the age period between my son's date of birth and the end of World War II.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Just to put it in perspective.
Right,
50 years is a long time. And a lot's happening, and everything doubles in the time it takes to create something.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what the Moore's Law.
Well, we're going to go beyond Moore's Law. That's computing power.
That's technology in general,
And we've only got about 5 more years of the silicon chip, and it's going to go to carbon-60, and it's going to go to molecular nanotechnologies.
Well,
that are
nano is much smaller than molecular. We're beyond molecular already.
Well, we're not there with computing. The carbon-60 is going to be molecular. It's going to be an element for the basis of the information technology, and it's going to be molecular. It'll go through the bloodstream. And it's going to be overwhelmingly productive and exponentially so beyond anything of Moore's Law with the silicon chip.
Well,
so exponentially
Moore's Law wasn't silicon chip. It was the technology in general.
Oh, okay.
And doubling every 7 years is an incredible achievement. Because remember that...
I thought it was 8 years. But
okay.
Yeah.
Whatever, Mr. Moore, forgive me.
No, but we understand.
7 or 8 years.
But
the idea is tumultuous change.
The first computer that they had, it would have 1 megabyte. We did a program, Mr. Garwin. He was one of the early developers that he said he was at IBM. They would have a room this size with vacuum tubes to get 1 millibyte of memory, and now it's down to nothing.
My cousin helped write the Moonshots program.
Yeah, right. It's a modern miracle.
It's getting it. We're very close to the point where we'll have electronic mind reading, but we'll save that for a third show.
electronic mind reading.
Well, if we can translate if we can translate the impulses, thought impulses, into electronic data, which is close because it is electrical impulses that are translated into thought.
That's true.
Once we can translate that into machine, I mean, we can already have basic things like getting artificial arms to move by by implanting a chip. Well, once that chip is a millionth the size of what we're currently doing.
A billionth. Nano is a billionth.
No, it's a billionth. Why? I'm saying the chip a millionth the size of our smallest chip now.
Okay, yeah.
But whatever, a billionth. You know, these are all.
These are such
fancy.
You can't remember.
A billion here, a billion there, and soon you're talking real money.
That's Ed Dirksen. God bless him. Yeah, he was something else. You betray your age.
I was 10 years old when I leafleted for Barry Goldwater. So absolutely liked Eric Dirksen. And you're right, a billion. Well, back then a billion was money.
He did it with great elocution. He said, a billion here and a billion there, and it finally adds up to real money.
With that wonderfully mellifluous voice of his.
Much better than mine.
But yeah, the technology is going to be remarkable. You know, the merging of machine. They're talking now about implantable memory into humans. All of that.
Yeah.
Whatever we can think of
now. They do
now.
ocular implanting now.
To a degree.
For sound.
Oh yes.
For audio. Yeah.
Yeah. Rush Limbaugh has that.
Does he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah.
The drug Oxycontin he was taking for pain from his surgeries made him deaf. So he has ocular implants put in.
Okay, yeah.
However, that simply reinforces what we were starting to talk about, which was how to get the wealth into the hands of people and allow them to participate in the general growth of the economy.
Well, that would be a good idea, it seems to me. If
does.
we could do that, we haven't done it very
because they poo-pooed the Social Security proposal by President Bush.
Well, maybe it wasn't ripe.
It may not have been
ripe. I mean, it wasn't politically ripe.
And I also think that Ronald Reagan was the great communicator, and Bush is his opposite. Probably the worst. He may have had great ideas, but he's the worst communicating president I've ever read about.
He's not terribly,
he's not very articulate.
Yeah, right.
To me, he makes Calvin Coolidge seem like a talkative fellow.
Yeah.
The old story about Calvin Coolidge. A lady had gone up to him at a party and said, "Mr. President, I bet my friend I could get you to say more than 3 words." And his reply, "You lost."
That's good. I like that. Is that trademarked? Or no?
You may use
it's out to public.
Absolutely.
That's public domain. Okay, that's
that's
good.
one of my favorite.
Yeah, but
jokes.
that question of you're having that thing about. So you had among other theoretical people, you had Mr. Marx, and you have what you call the left wing. Right. And we have 2 loci of power and influence in the way the society of the world is set up. One is on the one hand private sector, corporate, profit, and on the other side they call it public, but it's really governmental, and that's tax and spend and regulate.
Right.
These are the 2 loci in which all the news is reported and so forth. And those are the 2 factors. And then we had what they call in economic theory, demand side. And then you have the supply side, Mr. Mundell and so forth.
Milton Friedman.
And Milton Friedman you would count supply side. Yeah,
so
okay.
Would he.
And Schumpeter, would you put in with him also?
Schumpeter I'm not very familiar with.
Schumpeter is creative entrepreneurialism. You got to keep the avenue to entrepreneurial new to knock off the old and that kind of stuff.
Well,
he argued vociferously with Mr. Keynes. He had tremendous arguments with Keynes. He was from Austria. And Austrian thing, and he argued, and he's very
Remember, I went to school during a Keynesian Galbraithian era. So,
I'm hip, I know.
So
everything
they didn't expose us to free thinkers.
Well, they were interested in getting. See, we have a capability to produce goods and services that our systems don't let us realize because the folks do not have the ability to buy what we're capable of doing. Do you think that's true?
No.
You don't think there's a problem on the demand side?
No.
Is it part of an equation that you have to have? People are going to have the income, and if you take as a basic premise the idea that Mr. Keynes did, that you're going to have displacement of labor. Let's not say in the real world, but in the world of the way things are actually being produced.
I'll give you a real world example.
Okay.
I think this is going to shock you.
Okay.
All right.
I like being shocked.
Take outsourcing.
Yes, right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
The great fear at first was outsourcing to India. you know, in information businesses, answering,
Yeah.
telecommunications, you know,
Right.
your help desks, going off to India.
Yeah.
Right. Numbers of large companies like Tiger and EvalueServe are now outsourcing to China,
Yeah.
to Russia, and they're starting to outsource to the Americas, because as the standard of living of those countries rises quickly, it no longer becomes cost effective to outsource it out of the country.
Is that right? That's starting to kick in
So as an
now,
example,
right?
take an MBA. An MBA can be outsourced in India for $30,000 a year,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
40,000.
Uh-huh.
All right. Now, an American MBA might make 50,000.
Okay, that's pretty close.
It's pretty close. It's no longer worth outsourcing.
It used to be higher, the difference?
This difference used to be higher.
Yeah.
So it's no longer worthwhile to outsource the American MBA to India.
That's
Unless-
interesting. The American MBA, much less. Does that get
Now,
down
this
to
is not the
rank
American.
and file
This is
things
absolutely.
on the assembly
Call
line
centers
and
are moving. If you look at your call centers, you'll see that a lot of your help desks are back in the Midwest now, or Florida. The telephone company, I happen to use AT&T Singular. Their call centers are now in Florida. Okay, where they can find English-speaking people who are fairly articulate, who come at a lower price. Now, you get enough outsourcing to Florida, it drives the price of people up.
Are you familiar with Ray Kurzweil by any chance? The cyber guy, who wrote the book, The Age of Spiritual Machines?
No.
He's really somebody interesting on that cyber thing. And I bring it up not as a non sequitur, because I think it's relating, because everybody who's interested, I know of, that is interested in the philosophy and the implications of technology in the form of extended consciousness, the computer and that kind of thing. They all meet on his site. It's the most rich site you could ever imagine, talking about the implications of cyber. And one of the things, he said two things. He had a program. He wrote a book in 1989 called The Age of Intelligent Machines. And this system was just coming. And he predicted within about 3 months, I think, 10 years out, when the computer would defeat the world chess champion. He came in with about 3 months, from 10 years out. And then he wrote another book called The Age of Spiritual Machines. And that was come out in 1999. And he is sort of widely recognized as somebody, some people think he's beyond the pale and that kind of stuff, but he's very brilliant. Minsky and all these people meet on his site.
So it sounds to me like a science fiction writer without the entertainment value.
Well,
Isaac Asimov was writing about intelligent and spiritual machines in the 1940s.
Writing very well, I, Robot. Yeah, we did a program with Isaac Asimov.
Excellent.
And I did a program with him, and I way back when, and I looked him up, and who's who, and he had written on virtually every subject. He was a polymath. So instead of starting the program, what have you written on? I said, is there anything you've not written on? Not on. Do you know what his answer was?
No.
He said it was only one field of human endeavor and thought that he absolutely could not get his mind around. He tried. He had really tried in that dark room where he wrote. And there was only one thing he could not fathom.
What?
It was economics. He could not understand economics. It was kind of interesting.
And you're right, he never wrote about it.
He never did.
He never touched on the economies.
It was so arcane and it was so subject to a different interpretation, and yet it's absolutely crucial to the operation of the system, and there's all these different kinds of ways of thinking about it. Anyway, the thing about Mr.
And in fact, had he studied economics, he'd know that his book Caves of Steel could never have happened.
Well, okay.
Anyway, the population would... When a society reaches certain economic levels, their birth rate drops dramatically.
Well, you begin to start getting into things like we may be coming to speciation. I just agree. I didn't know if it was you or somebody else that did a program. I think we've reached a point now, and he has another book now. It's called The Singularity is Near. There have been a series of singularity. Big Bang was a singularity. Beginning of life from chemical there were singularities. We're at a singularity now. We've been here 200,000 years, and the Homo sapiens at a point of singularity is near. It's not very far off, 10 years, something. But people, anyway, he said that they are going to have, in that book, he said there are two things. One, they're going to do, and Sergey Brin and those people at Google, the main thing they're working on is being able to translate the languages of the world between themselves. So that you'll be able, AT&T offered, you speak in English into the telephone, it comes out in German, Germany.
Absolutely.
Oh, they can do that. They haven't got it. They did it for a while. They had to take it off the market.
Actually, there's a free written service right now
but
called
the point being
Babel.
is, they're
Babelfish.
All right, Babel,
Google
Babel. But I mean, that would be a great big thing because we got to about 7,000 languages. We're losing a lot of them, culturally advantaged, and it's all cyber. Mr. Keynes is not so off that, but we've got to have people. We can create jobs. The pharaohs didn't they? Got people dragging great stones across the thing in order to build temples to themselves. We can make work, and we can make work in order to distribute income to people and ignore the technological capabilities that are there for tremendous output by a combination of man, labor, input, and other things, technology and so forth, which is increasingly technological. And we can ignore that thing the way, we tried to stay with feudalism and
I think
agriculture.
of government.
But you're not going to be able to get rid of all your wage slaves. Listen, you're not going to be able to get rid of all your wage slaves because then you lose the demand and you will not have the market to buy, able to buy that which we're capable of
Harold,
in a living sense.
You're just rephrasing what you said earlier, and as far as I'm concerned, no offense, and I love you.
That's
and
all right.
I think you're brilliant.
We're friends forever.
And I think you're dead wrong.
Okay, good.
Now, for starters, to me, government and government programs are like blood-sucking leeches.
Doesn't have anything to do with government.
You were saying make work. You were saying make work programs.
No, make work can be done by corporations. Corporations can be just as impressive as a government agency and just as inefficient. Those corporate structures are inefficient. It's not government or that. That's an old argument. The thing is, it is that the input, you're going to have to get some... And you could do that through private sector ownership by the masses.
By government.
But it's not a government thing you're talking about.
What I'm talking about is by government, by fiat. Let's say the government hires a whole bunch of private companies to build roads.
Right.
Okay, in the beginning we'll need some roads. 10 years from now we'll have too many roads. When does the government stop? Well, the government doesn't stop.
Well, the corporations can do the same. Through bad judgment or through bad design.
Absolutely, but they're punished and they stop. For example, the technology bubble of 2001, when it burst, was directly, as an example, Global Crossing, the third largest bankruptcy at the time.
I remember.
Unfortunately, president of the company was a close friend of mine.
WorldCom was another?
WorldCom was another. Global Crossing did the right thing at the wrong time. It built fiber. It put fiber all over the world.
Isn't fiber coming now?
Fiber's necessary right now. No, not just Fios. I mean massive cables of fire. They had submarines laying it under the ocean. Really intensive use of fiber. For example, soon with Fios and other fiber uses, everyone will be wired. But they were a little early. So what happened is...
My daddy used to say, son, it's good to be ahead of your time, but not too far.
Right. And they went broke because they built too much fiber and nobody had a need for it. It was like the canals and the railroads. You know, they built 5 or 6 railroads going north, east to west in the 1860s and 70s. Well, we only needed 2 or 3. It was the same with the fiber. We built, at the time, 10 or 20 times what we needed. However, in the last decade, we've grown to the point where we're using that fiber now. So those, what they call dead pipes, are now lit.
I had a friend I did a program with, an older man. He's in the 80s. Beautiful guy. He's written a book I think it's going to become a modern classic. And he was entrepreneurial. I mean, he had 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence, and 1 of the Constitution were his his relatives back to South Carolina there. And he was in Yale and Harvard business and at DuPont, entrepreneurially inclined, and everything, built the shrimp industry. And they put all this money into getting shrimp. Shrimp is going to become a staple. They went through all the $100 million, a lot. Everybody who invested in it lost everything entrepreneurially, but the industry was born. And there was entrepreneurial development that came from that. And I think his book is going to become a modern-day classic.
I'm going to segue.
Singing the prizes of the entrepreneur.
You're totally right.
Who may not even realize a return on it.
You're right. Now let's use an example everyone can...
That's Schumpeter,
everyone can use. Totally correct. And
his name is John Cheshire. People should...
I'll think of the cat and look it up.
Pay attention to him. He's a very important fellow He's older now, but he's made a great contribution.
We're all older now.
It's going to become a staple, shrimp.
It will, and it's getting cheaper
But
and
it was
cheaper.
because of him that it happened. It was the
I
entrepreneurs
assume he
that
did
it.
the agri-farming.
Well, yes,
intense.
but you can read the book. It's Memoirs of a Shrimp Farmer.
Let's use as an example, Harold, the auto industry in the 1900s.
That's my territory. I'm from Detroit. Mr.
Well,
Ford used to fool around in my grandmother's garage when he was 10 years old as a
I hope
kid.
your grandfather didn't mind.
No, he was tinkering, Smarty. He didn't. Oh, dear.
Sorry.
Quick. We can do shtick, huh?
I can do shtick.
Yeah, the Evan Charlie show.
Why not?
Yeah, right on.
Okay, there were dozens and dozens of auto manufacturers back then.
Yeah, right. Rio.
Dozens. Can't even name them all.
Yeah, right.
General Motors was a combination of 6 or 7 of them, or 8 of them,
Mr.
of the
Sloan.
big ones.
Yeah.
Right. There was an Olds, there was a Buick, there was a...
I loved Oldsmobile. My favorite car was a Pontiac.
Very nice cars, too.
Yeah,
and that was
it
a separate
lovely.
company at one time.
54, 55. They really had some character there.
Nice wings.
They all look the same now to me.
It's called
I didn't want to
It's
interrupt
called
you,
aerodynamics.
but
the companies, the top 3 companies the top companies would survive. The smaller ones would get merged together and joined to create the 4th company. Then
Tucker.
Studebaker. I actually worked for a former division of
Did
Studebaker,
you?
Worthington.
You've been around the block.
Well, this was in a company that was acquired 4 times after that, called Wagner Brakes.
Okay.
At any rate, we
only got about 7 minutes left, so
then
we
I'll hurry
get the
along.
punch in. You got to get the really good stuff.
The real upshot.
Haiku. You got to use haiku now.
Okay. Upshot is failure. You still have 4 auto companies, but they have different names now.
Right.
They're going to fail. I'll bet you Chrysler, Ford disappear, and we'll have a Japanese and a German and an American company, and one of the Japanese or 2 of the Japanese will fail, and we'll add a Korean.
Yeah.
It's going to we'll keep having the big 4. It won't be the same big 4.
I see. Yeah.
And it's going to keep changing.
Peter. Yeah.
Okay. And it's a cleansing.
Yeah. Creative entrepreneurialism.
And what it does is it forces competitiveness, forces efficiencies, it forces more jobs to be created all over the world.
Well, that's a question.
Well, by having a 5.4 unemployment rate, with industry leaving the country like crazy, something's going right.
The Pharaohs had an unemployment rate of 0.0, and get some more people to drag those stones. If the labor is not needed, if there's something to the fact that the input to production is not dependent on human beings, as it has been. Mr. Ford had to have people stand there and turn a nut for 8 hours a day. It can be done by machinery.
It is done.
It should be done by machinery.
Right.
It should be displacing labor. It should be displacing labor in the translation of languages. It should be displaced, and you're going to end up with leisure, and you're going to end up with unlimited productive capability. Doesn't need people getting in the way.
And in our next show, I'm going to show you how they're going to become wealthy, even though they're not necessarily working.
Oh, thank you. I would love the whole world to be comfortably or affluently leisured. Would you like that?
It will happen.
So they don't have to go out and become wage slaves for the few people.
It will happen.
The small little group of people who own the capital assets. Why do we put up with allowing a small group of investment bankers or something own all the capital? All the people are dependent. Please, could we get a job to get some income to buy bread? It's like serfs on a feudal estate, and when are we going to not put up with that any
Because
longer?
the Democrats won't allow it.
Well, it won't be the Democrats.
It is the Democrats.
No, it's not the Democrats.
Absolutely.
It's the intellectual community writ large.
Also.
Why do we go along with it? When are we going to have a liberation?
Let's dispel it. In our next show, we'll talk about
we still got 4 minutes to dispel it here.
In 4 minutes, it's going to be tough.
Can't you do it in 4 minutes?
Absolutely.
The 4 minute test?
I can't do a haiku, but I can do a 4-minute test.
Okay.
I can try to do a haiku.
I think we're going to have to expand private ownership.
Let me have my haiku moment.
Okay.
Economy expands private ownership by allowing individuals to take their largest savings asset, Social Security, 15% of their income, and put it into the private sector and grow it multi-generationally, so that in 3 generations, a working class man will have left enough money to his great-grandchildren that they're going to be millionaires sitting in their retirement account.
I see. How are they going to get the money to put into the Social Security through their wages and their savings?
Because it's already been shown If you just did an IRA for your entire life from age 19 to retirement at $2,000 a year, that you'll retire a millionaire. If you're putting away 15% of your income for that period of time, you're really going to be rich. And there's nothing the rich can do to stop you.
So you're saying that that the working people, if they would...
They're being cheated by the power elite and by the intellectuals right now from being allowed to own their stake in the economy. They're being forced to put it into dead government programs.
What's to stop them from just taking money that they've earned and save it, put it in a savings account?
A lot of them do it.
And invest it in the stock market.
Because
why have so few done it?
Well, so few do it.
Why?
Many do. Because you're wrong. They do it. It's called their pensions. However, we're taking 15% of their money and putting it into this dead program of Social Security, which is it's really a fancy form of wealth transfer.
Yeah, the Social Security.
It's an intergenerational wealth transfer.
Well,
it's
you're
not
smoking something strange. Social Security is not going to go away. Social Security is a solid underpinning that is going to be built upon by increasing up the risk ladder by which the monies that can go into it, and not from past savings or not from savings. It's going to be done with private property ownership rights being extended to the mass of the
people. What I'm saying, exactly what I'm saying.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying, now...
That's not. You're not saying that. You're talking about save their little money that they get from. They're still going to have the wage slavery and so forth.
This generation will be more of a wage slave than the next generation, and unless thereafter, you don't get these transformations immediately.
No, but you do have a vision to where you're going.
My vision, absolutely.
And we don't have that vision. We said so in our leadership. They don't have it. All they're doing, even Mr. Obama, it says, we're going to get jobs for everybody.
Well,
we're
Mr.
going to get
Obama,
jobs, and the jobs suck. The jobs are demeaning, and the jobs are not fulfilling.
Mr.
And
Obama,
you're going to have
his idea of doing something new is a lie. He comes out of the old Chicago school of make-work politics. The most corrupt. When I studied political science, Chicago was the most politically corrupt and is the most politically corrupt system, a governmental system in the country.
The operation of the University of Chicago? Oh, the city of Chicago.
The city of Chicago.
Worse than all the others, right? It's good to have standards.
Well, we had Mayor Daley.
Mr. Daley, God bless
you got to be best at something. Chicago was best at corrupt politics, but he got the trains to run.
Yeah.
However,
like Mussolini.
It wasn't nice to live there either.
Yeah, I know. I understand.
So his idea is all formed by these make-work programs. So let's if you'll have me again, let's talk.
Of course. We've not yet begun to talk, Edmund Voyer. We've got to talk because these are all interesting things. But the clock runs out. We've run out of time for this one.
Time waits for no man.
Time waits for no one. It passes you by. Happy to have you view Edmund Voyer. We're talking about things and everything that we probably agree more on than we realize, and we're going to come to an agreement on these issues. They're major issues. Social Security is still a big issue.
Yeah, we have to talk
about it in the campaign and so forth. And it is also subject to such variegated ways of thinking that such a polymath as Isaac Asimov could not get his mind around it. No wonder. There's so much spin, it just makes your head spin.
It's true.
So thank you very much for viewing. Thanks for coming in. It's really good. And we invite you to tune in. We've run out of time for this particular segment. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. Good. And Edmund, thank you very much. So good talking to you. And we've got to talk over this stuff more. Okay, tune in tomorrow. So we just get to the point. I think as Mr. Kelso is on the thing, if you ever get around to that. But I do think they should just get rid of work.